Kim,
Hey Adam, how are you?
good. Thanks for taking the time to chat today. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so look, the intent of our conversation today is we're having these series of conversations to highlight the amazing work and some of the amazing agencies and people in this field that have the pleasure of serving and helping people build families every day. As you know, the industry doesn't always get the best press coverage or the most fair coverage of what we do, and what we do is so amazing. So. I'm excited to get to have this dialogue to learn more about you and ACRC and the work you all do. To start, do you want to start by introducing yourself and the agency?
Yeah, of course. Hello everyone. My name is Kim, and I work with ACRC Global. We are a full service surrogacy and egg donation agency. I myself have been in the fertility field for a little bit over 12 years. I actually started on the clinical side of things. So I was with a fertility clinic when I first started my career. And I always like to say, some people are lucky to kind of know what they want to do. I am on the other side of that spectrum where I kind of fell into the industry. I started as like a receptionist, and then just with seeing our clients come in and just hearing more and learning more about the industry, I really just fell in love with it. Fertility found me, and I'm just so grateful to have found the space where I'm able to support families and just create such a beautiful experience for many people. Yeah, a little bit about me.
Oh, that's amazing. Tell me a bit about the agency. What makes the agency different? And what should people know about the agency?
Yeah, of course. So I will say, if you look up surrogacy, egg donation, fertility, anything like that, you will get a huge list of agencies, and that will change year to year. The names that you see on those lists are consistently changing. So I think one of the biggest things that makes ACRC special and different is just how long we've been in the industry. We've been established for well over 15 years, and that is a great success. Many agencies come and go year to year. So I think the major part is just our stability. You definitely, when you are looking for someone to help support you in such a major part of your life, you want stability, right? And then just speaking to our staff, our CEO, our processes, I think the level of care and just intention that we built into each individual journey is just super, super important. It's never just a journey for us. Each journey is special. Each couple that we help, each surrogate that we support, each donor that we guide through the process, they're real people, right? And they each hold their own individual hopes for why they're going through this process and what they're looking to do, and ultimately, the families that they're looking to build. So I think just being a part of that and understanding that at the core part, these are individuals that we are helping through such a special time.
Yeah, every journey is unique in it. Oh, I can attest to that. We've partnered with the agency almost since our creation 10 years ago and have successfully managed and worked and helped a lot of families together without issue, which is really amazing. So
We've
the
been friends a long time.
yeah, no, and a lot of happy clients served together, right? So, tell me I think it's a really unique opportunity as we talk here to, you've had 12 years of experience serving families and helping people in different areas of the industry, from the clinic to now an agency. I love your raw perspective on, what key advice would you give an intended parent considering surrogacy or looking at this journey early in their process of exploring?
Yeah, so definitely just I think having a good core of preparation, and then trust, right? I think that's the biggest one. Preparing yourself with the questions and, a general idea of the process, and then trusting the partners that you're working with to make your dream come true. There's lots of moments where really exciting things happen. You find a surrogate that you want to work with. You find a donor that you really, really like. You decide which clinic you want to work with. And that while there are many big moments of excitement, there are a lot of moments of uncertainty as well. So I think just being mentally and emotionally prepared for that makes such a big difference. As we just mentioned, no two journeys are ever really the same. So we get a lot of intended parents that are in these support groups and are hearing things and they say, well, my friend, this is what her journey looks like, or his or theirs. And, I think it's just important to trust that although your journey might not mirror that of someone that you know or someone that you've heard of, you're trusting the team that you've chosen to get you from point A to point, B, and ultimately bringing your child home.
It sure seems like that, we're talking a lot about the journeys being individual, right?
Yes,
And each journey is different because, look, it is a medical process and it is complex and there's different people and personalities involved. And I think, as you just talked about, you know, not necessarily just watching the forums or seeing some of the rhetoric or the advertisements. It's also, really taking the time to get educated on what questions to ask and then determining who you connect with. Because I feel like the personal relationship, having managed over 30,000 journeys on the escrow side, it sure seems like to me from the outside as a service provider doing escrow, looking at the agency and the relationships and how smooth the cases go or when they go well, it just seems like when that personal relationship and that trust is there, it makes such a big difference.
exactly. And I don't know that you would necessarily want a cookie cutter, experience either. You definitely do want it personalized. So I think that just speaks to understanding what your specific needs are, kind of knowing what you want things to look like, and then communicating that obviously with all parties. And then just following through with, each step as they come just makes for a much smoother process overall.
And you talked about the forums and some of the misinformation out there. What do you think some of the most common misperceptions are, or things that people should know or parents should know?
I
Um,
would say, yeah, the biggest one is timelines, right? It's expectations and timelines because information is so easily accessible now. It's great because you can kind of figure out which questions you should be asking, maybe get some insight on, hey, I never thought about that, but I should make sure that I touch base with my physician or my agency or my escrow company on, A, B, and C. But that also comes with the caveat of, well, mine should look that way because person A had, such a successful cycle and it followed the cookie cutter timeline. So because there are just so many moving parts with your medical team, your legal team, your financial team, things don't always move as quickly or as predictably as people would hope because, as humans, we just love predictability and being able to kind of understand what comes next. And unfortunately, fertility just very rarely follows, a set timeline. We always say these are more so guidelines, of what you can expect, but please don't hold them to exact facts for, when things might happen or how, things might happen, just because it can create tension and make things a little bit more negative for you, I would say, if they don't meet your expectations.
yeah, having worked with the agency for many years, I know you all lay out very clear steps. Here's what the process is, here's what to expect and what to guide people and to
Yes.
guide people, but you're completely right in terms of timelines and exactly how it's going to go and having the expectation that it's going to be mechanical. You can't think that way, right? Like I always think about my wife as an engineer, like who's very regimented and like
Yes.
her, like
It loves
it
the structure.
has to add up this way with the structure. But
hmm
you can't be that way and as you think about your journey and and surrogacy. But I do know having an excellent agency that can set those expectations and so you're not surprised is really important.
Exactly. Yeah, it's always education, like top right priority. Let's make sure that you and I are on the same page. And, if you have any questions, we're answering them immediately, just so you know what to expect, transparency, and just keeping that communication flowing. I think same way in relationships, it's going to be we're built in a relationship until you have your baby. So just making sure that that communication stays open and transparent is just great.
Yeah, you're hiring the professionals and arguably the agency is the closest group to your journey overall. You're hiring that team that's going to help you with one of your most important journeys in your life. So it's important, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's pivot to talk about surrogates and care and gestational carriers.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for surrogates? What should they know?
Yeah, so I think similar to the way we support our intended parents, we are as dedicated to supporting the other side of that journey, which is our gestational carriers, our surrogates. So I think for them to just understand that they are not alone in this journey and they should never feel that they're alone, right? If you feel like you are doing this great thing and you're alone, there's a problem. So at ACRC, we really dedicate ourselves to make sure that our surrogates are aware that they have a full team behind them for the duration of their journey and afterwards, right? So that includes making sure that they are connected with us for the entire journey. They are getting acceptable information in terms of like which attorneys they could be using, should be using, medical providers. We're connecting them with these clinics and connecting them with nurses and making sure that if it's something outside of our scope medically, we're able to refer them to the coordinating parties to get the answers that they need for medications and things like that. And it just, again, makes sure that they feel guided and protected because pregnancy, let's be honest, is a very vulnerable state for a woman to be in. So just making sure that they feel, supported and protected just helps for a smooth journey for them and then the intended parents in turn.
I couldn't agree more. What do you think some of the misconceptions are for surrogates are, or things that they should know, or even typically cause problems or could cause problems?
Yeah, so sometimes communication is really hard, right? We work with many intended parents, both domestically and internationally. So sometimes that culture barrier makes things a little bit more
Mhm.
difficult when, maybe let's say language is a touch point. So, they say, well, if I'm not able to see my intended parents or maybe communicate with my intended parents, I don't really know how I'm supposed to feel, when it comes time to deliver this baby and hand off a baby to essentially a stranger, So we make it very accessible for them to be able to communicate with those intended parents. Obviously they are meeting at the very beginning of the journey to kind of make that connection and decide if they would like to work together, but establishing communication from the very beginning so that they are able to build a more familiar connection throughout the journey, just so that by the time baby does come, they don't feel like a complete stranger is in the room or anything like that. So even if you aren't able to, let's say, maybe connect with them because they don't live here domestically, there is still an opportunity for relationship building and things like that.
And I love that you talked about having them surrounded by the right professionals and equal representation. I think that's so critical.
Yes.
So what surrogates are doing to help a family is incredible. Like it's just to me, it's like I always anybody that's ever heard me talk about surrogates, I liken them to like superheroes in my mind. They're like really
Yes,
special
definitely.
superheroes that give the greatest gift to another family and do a very selfless thing. I even think about like what would be the closest thing I could think about to that is, and I can't even wrap my head around it, but it'd probably be something along the lines of like giving an organ, right? Or like saving
Right.
a life, like doing a life saving surgery to help another person because it's just such a meaningful thing that you're doing. Like after they complete the journey, they enter this like elite class of people who've just done something so amazing, you know.
Yes.
And having rambled about all of that, they deserve to be protected and to be cared
Yes.
for, and it is emotional process on both sides, right? And sometimes tensions rise, especially when there's different cultural and language barriers. So I think having professionals
Yes.
around the journey to help navigate that is extremely critical. Speaking of that, what would you say some of them are the most common challenges in a journey that people should know about and ways to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so biggest challenges, I would say, obviously depending on whether you are working with international clients versus domestic, right? I think I kind of touched on that a little bit. It's very similar. With our international clients, it's more so of just a complete educational, session of like how things work, right? They're living in a different country, they speak a different language. Culturally, things are very, very different. So sometimes challenges for them arise with, as easy as what does insurance look like in the United States, So again, just making sure that they're working with resources that have access to information to be able to provide them with, third-party insurance brokerages that can kind of walk them through that. Escrow and, okay, I'm sending this large amount of money into this place. How do I know that it's being spent the way that you're saying it's being spent? So even just being able to let them know, hey, you can log into your escrow account with Seed and pull up a receipt and an invoice matching to the 10,000 deduction that you just saw, I think just really helps. So having that transparency, having that communication and having those resources just to be able to provide as much information as possible just really helps ease that anxiety. And it's really just more information is always more. We never say we can give too much information. We can never over-educate somebody. Our goal is always just providing as much as possible and then them being able to kind of process all the information and make sure that they feel comfortable with where they are at each step of the journey.
And that's really, really good advice. And are there certain areas you see that are common tension points
I
or
would say
that
money.
money? Yeah.
Money. Yeah, which I'm sure you could imagine. We're asking these intended parents to deposit and trust us with very, very large amounts of money, which even if, financially, maybe it's not a touch point for you, we're speaking of tens of thousands of dollars that are being put into this account. And similarly on the egg donation and surrogate side, right? These women are being paid and are expected to be paid a certain amount of money in a certain amount of time. So I think anytime money comes into play, it's always a tension point, right? So just having that transparency and clarity with receipts and, tracking deposits, tracking withdrawals, all of those things just it really just helps keep everyone happy.
Yeah, no, the financial component of the journeys are kind of central. A lot of the contract is built around that.
Exactly.
Um, and you mentioned international, like even the concept of escrow doesn't exist in a lot of countries.
Exactly.
In America, we're used to like escrow for title, right? Or when you buy a house or large purchases. In some countries, it just doesn't exist. So it's like a whole new concept, right?
Yes,
You know,
100%.
the, you know, obviously the money management, making that transparent, secure, and fair for both parties is kind of central to why we exist. And what we saw 10 years ago when we started the business, back then it was literally once a month, maybe ledgers and checks in the mail, and nobody was checking or reviewing anything, and there was no
Right.
protocols around security. Truly the Wild Wild West, and we were kind of the innovators of scheduled payments and transparent portals and real-time access to make it. And our goal, and I think what's important, is just to make the financial component less stressful, not to eliminate it, because it's a lot of money and it's a very complex process. We just want to
Exactly.
make it safe and less stressful. You know, I think it's really important that people have a strong agency and trust their agency and also have a good escrow company that can work together. Because you don't want the parents and the surrogates fighting over lost wages
Exactly.
or debating whether what bed rest should be or what the contract says around travel. That should be spelled out in the contract, and the professionals should be able to discuss that if it's unclear, make a recommendation and get an approval if needed. You want the conversations with the parents and the surrogate to be about the baby, to be about the beautiful journey, how the pregnancy's going, and let that be the main thing. But it takes having the right team and trust in place for that to be possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we always say, when we're assisting intended parents and surrogates with, because like I said, they're strangers essentially, right, that are joining this journey together and entering an agreement to essentially become family. So we say, when you're building these relationships, you don't want to have to go to your surrogate to ask her about money or ask her about an appointment or ask her, your questions should remain, hey, how are you feeling? Has the baby made any special movements or is there anything special you've noticed? And for surrogate, it's sending a maybe like a tummy bump picture, right? Or maybe, she's sharing a little gift that she was able to purchase for the baby or something like that. Leave the boring journey, medical, money, all of that to your agencies and your dedicated team and just focus on building that friendship and that relationship with your intended parents and your surrogate.
Absolutely. What? Look, I'm like a total escrow dork, right? Like I get up, living, breathing, sleeping, checks and balances and security and systems and all of that. But what questions or misunderstandings do you get sometimes from parents or surrogates about the role of escrow or why it matters, or even just the financial pieces?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest one, kind of like you mentioned, is why do I need an escrow company? Can I just pay my surrogate from my bank account, or can I just give you guys the money? And our answer is obviously always, no, that's not the way things are done. So firstly, it's just explaining, what escrow is, right? And I think it's focusing and highlighting that escrow is established as a safety protocol, right, for both ends. It's an independent third party that doesn't have any sort of affiliation to us personally, other than we are third parties that work together. And then obviously you equally represent the intended parents as well as the surrogate. So you accept money from the intended parents and then you deposit in accordance with that contract that we were kind of talking about. So that's kind of the biggest thing is just explaining why they're in place. And then it really does create that safety net for both parties, right? Okay, the intended parents feel safe depositing that amount of money, knowing that there is a checks and balance in place for, when things are being asked to be deposited, if they're not in line with the established agreement, do we have something in writing saying that the intended parents approved for this to be released? For the surrogates, it's just really that transparency of like timely payments, right? As you mentioned, you guys have that great system that we love, the scheduled payments. So things like monthly allowance that typically don't change month to month. A surrogate can log into her account really, really easily and see exactly which day she can expect for that to be released to her. So I think just having all of those things in place really help put everyone at ease with those large amounts of money being transferred back and forth.
For sure. I think, it's interesting. Sometimes I come across like parents, intended parents that don't understand on their side. We have the fiduciary responsibility to make sure that money is strictly managed per that contract. So of course we're going to hold it securely and make sure it's there for the journey, but we catch millions of dollars in mistakes every year of money that would have got paid out if we weren't checking. And and we verify every payment, every receipt against their contract, and if it's not in their contract, they have to approve it. Right. So for them having that, and also we had a trend or a few cases that went to direct pay, which is a terrible solution and really puts everybody at risk, but also puts a world of work and stress on the parents because it's 60 to 80 payments with very specific calculations and timelines, or they're in default, right? So
Right.
I think a lot of parents don't know that having that independent really protects them. Independent escrow protects them across the board with what's going on to the surrogate providers, everybody. Um, and it's also why we upset people sometimes because they're like, hey, I don't want to pay this. Well, we have to pay it if it's in the contract, right?
Exactly.
If it's not in the contract, then you have to approve it, right? If there's a real dispute, then we'll work, help navigate those. But if it's due, it has to be paid. And that's a big part of what we do for the things that I often hear that surrogates don't fully understand is the money is in escrow, so it's there and it has to be paid per that contract.
Right.
And unfortunately, in rare cases, emotions are high. And, we had a case where somebody didn't want to pay their surrogate-based comp because she unfriended them on Facebook.
Oh,
And unfortunately, there was not a social media clause in the contract.
right.
So she had to still get her base comp, and of course we got involved, and the agency got involved, and we worked through the relationship component there, but it wasn't a reason to hold payment to get their way to be a friend. It's still on Facebook. So it's important that surrogates are protected. Like again, what they're doing is such an amazing thing. They need protection, and that they should make sure that money's in that escrow before they get pregnant, right?
Right, 100%. And that's always something, I think sometimes also people are so excited in the beginning. That's a question that we do get sometimes is, okay, great. We're ready to go. Can we do maybe two things at once, right? Can we start the legal process and can we just start with the medications because we want a specific due date or, and I think just highlighting again those milestone steps and what we're looking at where we say, nope, everything has a timeline for a reason. Steps are done in a specific order just to make sure everyone's protected and things are done in the right place. So obviously legal will come first. We make sure that those deposits are made so that we have a fully funded account and then we can kind of move on to the fun stuff and get a baby for everyone.
For sure. Let's go up a level. Right? I can talk about escrow all day, so I don't want to bore you and everybody else. Let's go up a level. What gets what I feel like what we do is such a privilege. I don't know if
It
you
really
feel that
is.
way. Like I know
Yes.
what most people don't know is most professionals in our field are working around the clock, 24/7, and it's a total passion, total purpose-driven job for most of us. It's and certainly a labor of love. Right. So, but what keeps you going? What excites you or motivates you and keeps you inspired?
Yeah, so like I kind of said in the beginning, I feel that fertility found me. I wouldn't ever say that I actively searched for a career in fertility. And, I think that goes to just the advancements that are being made in the industry, which kind of speaks to why a lot of people don't know about it, right? It's such a niche and ever-growing industry that it's difficult to, I think, as a young person already know that you want to go into fertility. So it is for a lot of people, they don't start experiencing it until, sadly, maybe they have fertility issues and they need to seek a physician or something like that. And that's actually how a lot of, nurses end up in the work as well. And agencies are built because someone had some sort of an encounter with a fertility issue, ended up needing help, and then fell in love with it. So for me, I think just the advancements that are being made with education and just the attention that's being brought to fertility, with even just needing help, right? It's better to be checked out sooner rather than later. For our surrogates, we work really, really hard to expand social media reach so that if you are a woman in the appropriate age that has had a child, you are getting our ads with, hey, this might be something that you can do as well. So just the expansion, I think, of the industry in whole is what keeps me really inspired because I know it's just going to keep getting bigger. It's going to keep getting more attention. And with that, the more attention something has, the better, I think, lost my train of thought.
No, it's
Yeah, it gives it more opportunity, I think, for growth, right? The more attention and things like that, there's a bigger opportunity for growth because there's more eyes on it.
yeah, look, in growth in our field means we're helping more deserving people have a family and
Exactly.
that we're doing it in a way that we're protecting those that are helping them, right? That's what that's what growth really looks like, and I think what you're leaning into is how the industry we have had some bad actors, right? And that does cast an out over it gets oversized attention, and that's not unusual, right? Any bad actor in any field is going to get oversized attention. I think in our field, well, because what we do is so personal, right? When you have a bad actor or a criminal do something bad, it gets a lot of attention and kind of gives the whole industry kind of a bad image. And there's thousands of babies being born every year through this field in the United States, of these deserving families who've put so much on the line to create that family. Those stories don't get covered. Those smiling baby photos we get, and and those parents and that the surrogate with that fulfilled sense of doing something amazing. What gets covered is the bad decisions and the bad actor. So, how
Yes.
do how does ACRC and and you want the agency think about ethical decision making and educating people to avoid those situations?
Yeah, so I think our biggest concern and our biggest hope is that we are being as consistent as we can and as thoughtful as we can with every choice that we are making with each journey. So in this space, unfortunately, having good intentions isn't enough. You know, you have to follow very, very clear guidelines, and there are clear guidelines for that specific reason, to make sure that things are done in the correct and ethical way each time. So following things like ASRM guidelines and, legal requirements, because even those can change state to state. Those are always just a secure point for creating a good base foundation. Right. So they help guide us with like what's appropriate, what's safe, what's going to protect everyone involved. Again, it's not just the intended parents, it's also the surrogate and vice versa. We are entering into a very sensitive agreement together. So it's just making sure that, we're asking simple questions like, well, is this fair? What's in the best interest of both parties? What is going to ensure that both parties are protected? So obviously those ethical choices are not always the easiest conversations to have or the easiest decisions, but sometimes we just need to slow things down and make sure that our boundaries that we're setting are very clear with both ends and that we're just creating that consistency to build that trust over time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Do you have any thoughts of things you think as an industry we could be doing better to better serve parents and surrogates?
I will say if you ever come across someone that tells you they can get it done for you quickly or faster than someone else, it should always raise up a little red flag, not to say just that maybe they aren't 100% able to give you something maybe faster than someone else, but is it being done ethically? Right. So you want to do your research. You want to make sure that you are asking, the difficult questions. Okay, great. Well, maybe so and so told me that it wasn't possible. So why is it possible that, maybe you can get me through my journey a little bit faster? Or why is it, so much cheaper? Or just asking those questions. I think keeping that communication open and being honest with yourself and the parties that you're working with for what you need and what you expect out of your journey. It's just going to help make sure that everyone is on the same page. Again, those boundaries are being set from the beginning, and you're not set up for something where you're disappointed because something didn't go the way that you expected.
That's really good advice. Um, no, I think the industry, and you talked about the industry growing and it is evolving so fast. And I think in a very positive way, right? Where it's in general, it's evolving for the better with standards, more sophisticated providers, more information and education out there, state by state laws evolving, and as the need grows, we will grow. And I think we just have to keep getting better and adapting to improve. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation. If somebody listening to this wants to get to know more about ACRC or get more advice from you, what would be the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, of course. So the easiest thing is going to be visiting our website, and I'm sure we could plug it in somewhere here so it's an easy link. And you are able to go ahead and book a consultation with one of our trusted agents from there. Our team can kind of get an idea of what you're looking for, walk you through the process, cost expectations, and what a journey could look like for you, depending on your specific scenario. And just, this journey starts with trust and responsibility, so which we take very, very seriously. So we look forward to supporting anybody who's considering the path to parenthood, and we just hope to be able to help families build their dream of growing.
So, well, thank you so much, Kim. It's been a pleasure.
Of course. Thank you so much for your time, Adam.